CBS Mornings, weekdays on CBS.
It's a history-making meeting. 4 extraordinary women who are all 4-star generals and admirals.
How did you deal with being discriminated against?
I just worked harder.
The future of an ever-evolving U.S. military when we go person to person.
A New York grand jury is considering whether to indict the former president and current 2024 presidential candidate in connection to a hush money payment.
We want Mr. Bragg to come in and testify. We'd like to know what kind of communications Mr. Bragg may have had with the Justice Department.
I think that runs a clear risk of violating grand jury secrecy laws in New York.
President Xi has only left China twice since the pandemic, and both times revolved around Putin, Russia.
If China wants to play a constructive role here in this conflict, then they ought to press Russia to pull its troops out of Ukraine and Ukrainian sovereign territory.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Thank you for joining us. In 1985, Judge Saul Wachter, who at the time was the chief of the New York State Court of Appeals, said in an interview that if a district attorney was so motivated, he or she could persuade a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. That catchy phrase about indicting a ham sandwich then appeared in 1987 best-selling book Bonfire of the Vanities, written by Tom Wolfe. It has been a cliche in legal circles ever since. Donald John Trump, the 45th president of the United States, is not a ham sandwich, but that decades-old warning about the power of district attorneys and grand juries to indict hangs in the air, as a New York grand jury right now is considering whether or not to indict Trump. It would be the first criminal case in American history against a former president. Sources tell CBS News Trump is at Mar-a-Lago with his legal team and senior campaign advisors. Trump claimed over the weekend he would be arrested as early as today. For more on this, CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez joins us from Palm Beach, Florida. Manuel, set the scene for us.
Well, Major, we're along the bridge that goes to the president's residence. Former president's residence, Mar-a-Lago. Just an earshot away from him are all the protesters that you're seeing here. These are Trump supporters that have gathered, several dozen of them over the last few hours, with their signs, with their flags, showing their support, their solidarity with the former president, and also their disdain over what's happening in New York. They view the case there as purely politically motivated, and they feel that an attack on the president is an attack on them. So even if there isn't an indictment, the former president has achieved a few things here. One is to dominate the national conversation over the last several days, but also this, to give his supporters a new rallying point. Major?
Manuel Bojorquez, thank you so very much. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins us from New York City. Robert, set the scene for us.
Good to be with you, Major. We are outside the Manhattan Criminal Court. It's gotten warm here in New York, but it's still a waiting moment for so many on the Trump team, for those inside the grand jury behind us. They are trying to see if a decision on an indictment of former President Trump will come this week. There are still deliberations going on the prosecutorial side. We expect something potentially this week, but again, no firm word yet on when and if something would come.
What do you detect around you, Robert, in terms of security and either apprehension or anxiety about what may come next?
All around us right now, here at this street corner, are barricades, metal barricades put up by NYPD officers. And NYPD officers, most of them right now are in full uniform, ready to mobilize should an indictment come of former President Trump. There's a sense of preparation here on the law enforcement side among our intelligence sources that potential chaos, even violence, could come should an indictment arrive at Trump's doorstep. And they are bracing for that in terms of preparation. Everyone here, when you talk to cops, when you talk to local residents, they're hoping for a peaceful scene should Trump be indicted and come in and be arrested, fingerprinted, and arraigned. But after what happened on January 6th, there's a sense that everyone needs to be prepared for something, even if it doesn't happen.
Robert, as you well know, Donald Trump is a visual person. He likes the visualization of his walk through the American experience. this would be a completely unprecedented walk through the American experience. It would be a spectacle at every level. Do you think there is any level at which Trump relishes that possibility, even with the indictment and arrest coming with it?
Well, I can't read the former president's mind, but in terms of his campaign, you look at his campaign missives, the fundraising appeals he's been sending out, more than a dozen since Saturday. His tone has been defiant, his rhetoric hostile toward the district attorney here in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg. There's a combative approach from Trump's legal team, from the former president himself. That's not to say that he would somehow resist arrest should he be indicted in the coming days. We're told that he's ready to come potentially to New York. Secret Service is thinking through the logistics. But as a political moment, his allies tell CBS News that they believe he could actually consolidate some of the Republican vote around him by expressing grievance about how this has all unfolded in recent days.
And Robert, very quickly, I want to pick up on a point you just made reference to so the audience appreciates it. If there is, in fact, an indictment and former President Trump comes to where you are, he would come with Secret Service protection, and they would be engaging with the New York police and the authorities there. True?
That's exactly right. At this point, Trump's legal team tells CBS that they are not negotiating with the district attorney about a possible indictment. That would be down the road should it happen. But Secret Service controls the movements of a president and a former president, and they would be intimately involved with all those movements and arrangements.
Robert Costa, thank you very much. Joining us now is former Trump White House attorney Ty Cobb. Ty, it's great to see you. Joining us from Kiowa in South Carolina. Ty, do you believe that the indictment of the former president is inevitable?
It appears to me that the district attorney is determined to bring this indictment, yes.
Is that a good call from your vantage point, legally speaking?
As a former prosecutor, I think this is a very weak case. The law has to be contorted considerably in order to extend the statute of limitations into the felony area. Typically, the crime, the misreporting of a financial transaction is a misdemeanor under New York law. The only way to make it a felony is to suggest that it was done in a way that was intended to cover up a separate crime. That raises serious issues in terms of the legality of the approach by the DA, and it will likely get serious Court of Appeals scrutiny should a conviction ensue.
So I've talked to people who are close to the deliberations around the grand jury and the district attorney, and they've said, look, the facts of the case look pretty obvious, and there is a crime implicated, and if it were anyone other than Donald John Trump, the district attorney wouldn't hesitate even for a second to bring this case. Do you believe that's true?
Not at all. I think, in fact, it's just the opposite. I think the only person that would ever be indicted under the theory that the prosecutor is proceeding under is Donald Trump. And whether you like him or don't like him, it's an important principle of American justice that the justice system should strike hard blows, but fair blows. I think this is a very difficult case to bring, and I'm not the only one. U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District refused to proceed with it. Cy Vance refused to proceed with it. Mark Pomerantz wrote a book making it plain, as he referred to this particular aspect of the Trump investigation as the zombie investigation. And he preferred strongly that the district attorney proceed with financial improprieties. I don't think there's anybody in America who thinks this is a seriously strong case, at least anybody well-versed in the applicable law.
So you've been a prosecutor, Ty. You've also worked on the defense side of things. As someone who might understand the work product or the thinking of a defense attorney at this case, evaluate Michael Cohen as a potential witness to cross-examine.
I think he would, if you looked it up in Webster's, under God-given prosecution witness for a defense attorney, you'd see his picture. He's been interviewed multiple times by the FBI, the Southern District, the DA, the New York City Police. He has testified multiple times in front of a grand jury. His former lawyer, to whom he confided in early after his apartment was searched or his house was searched and his office was searched, advised the grand jury yesterday that he never mentioned any criminality by the former president and had a completely different story than the one he's pimped in front of this particular grand jury. That's not to say that that some of what's going on here in terms of congressional intimidation and interference with the DA's prosecutorial discretion isn't unseemly and unwarranted. I strongly feel that Congress should stay out of this and not threaten the district attorney's office. But I do think this is a very, very difficult case to make, particularly where Cohen really is the case.
Ty, you anticipated my next question, which is about this request for documents and testimony from Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, by 3 sitting committee chairs on the House Republican majority. I gather from what you just said, you don't think there is a jurisdictional role for Congress to play here and its interference?
I don't, and particularly in an ongoing case. I mean, at some point, there are going to be rulings in this case. Those rulings could be prosecutorial misconduct. They could be simple legal rulings that derail the case. There may come a point, at the conclusion of the case where it merits some scrutiny, but, Congress has no business interfering in an ongoing investigation, in my view. And the long tradition in America of prosecutorial discretion, even in a bad case, should really only be remedied, either by the disciplinary board for attorneys, the judges overseeing the case, or at the ballot box.
Ty, for those who may not know this and be listening to you for the very first time, they might think you are sympathetic to the former president. I know you have very strong feelings about other investigations implicating the former president, specifically that for Special Counsel Jack Smith and the events leading up to and on January 6th. That's one. There's a classified documents investigation. There's a separate Fulton County, Georgia election meddling investigation. Which of the 3 do you think pose the most legal jeopardy to the former president?
I think the most legal jeopardy to the former president is the Special Counsel Jack Smith investigation. He's looking at a variety of potential crimes, including he's looking at both the Mar-a-Lago crimes and the defrauding of the United States and interference with official proceedings, in specific the January 6th certification by Pence of the vote that was put on hold for several hours because of the demonstration, during which Trump tweeted out several critical comments about the vice president that certainly did not help the situation. I think that's a very serious circumstance. I think it's never happened before in American history in terms of a president refusing a peaceful transfer of power. I think that's something that deserves the full attention and authority of the United States and should be pursued to whatever the end is.
And Ty, very quickly, do you think what's going on in Manhattan undercuts or obscures the importance of that investigation?
I don't think it helps. I hear people talking about the, Trump coalescing support because of his witch hunt screams with regard to all these collateral matters. Let's get real. I mean, nobody is helped in a political setting by being indicted. It may coalesce some of Trump's strongest supporters, but they're already there for it. People who get indicted typically lose the support of intelligent people in their party and certainly independents. So I think while his supporters will rally around him strongly, and he's already incited them to do so, I don't believe that an indictment helps him in any way.
Ty Cobb, thank you very much.
Thank you, Major. Good to be with you.
Up next, House Republicans are vowing to investigate the investigators. We'll explain. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're going to tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
Identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
The news doesn't have to always be depressing.
What do you love about running?
It can be uplifting. That human connection that we create on the broadcast every night is incredibly important.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. A group of House Republicans want Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to answer questions over the impossible indictment of former President Trump. They're demanding Bragg's office hand over documents and testimony related to that investigation. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins me now from Capitol Hill. So this investigation has sparked more tension, obviously, between the U.S. House and that ongoing investigation, which you just heard Ty Cobb describe as an overreach by Congress. What are you hearing up there, Scott?
Well, Major, 2 months into this new Republican majority in the U.S. House, Congress really has defaulted into a position to which it became accustomed over the 4 years of the Trump administration, where they are arguing about Donald Trump. 3 chairmen of 3 committees have requested not just documents and communications from Alvin Bragg, but testimony from Alvin Bragg. And they're getting a strong response from Democrats who call that an overreach and improper. Take a listen.
The federal district of New York said this wasn't something they were going to pursue. The previous district attorney said this is something they weren't going to pursue. And even this district attorney say he wasn't going to pursue it. And then what happened? President Trump announces he's running for re-election, and shazam, no, now we're going to pursue it.
The district attorney's in the middle of an investigation, or maybe it's coming to its conclusion. We don't really know for sure, but it's inappropriate for these 3 committee chairs to try and pressure him into doing something different than following the grand jury process as it's outlined under New York state law. And they're definitely across the line when it comes to them pressuring him to disclose grand jury secrecy information. It's illegal in New York State, and I think it's a felony in New York State, and they should be avoiding that sort of thing just to start with.
About this renewed and intensifying focus on Donald Trump here in Congress, Senator John Cornyn, the Republican from Texas, just told us he'd like to see Republicans focus on the agenda that helped them win the majority in the U.S. House rather than this. And Kevin McCarthy was unequivocal, Major, saying, you're asking us about this. We're not trying to push out a message on this, but that does run counter to 3 House Republican chairmen announcing their investigation of Alvin Bragg.
They wrote the letter and the press release. Let's just remind the audience of that. One other question before I let you go, Scott. More information has emerged regarding the data breach that leaked personal information of thousands of D.C. employees. And as I gather from your reporting, some members of Congress. What's the latest?
There is growing concern about this breach of the D.C. Health Link, the D.C. government portal through which people who live here can get health insurance. Our latest reporting is that at least 17 members of Congress and an untold number of staffers have had their personal information hacked and potentially sold on the dark web. What kind of information? Like Social Security numbers, home addresses, phone numbers, emails, birthdays. Both the FBI and Capitol Police are investigating. There's certainly an identity theft risk here, Major, but also members of Congress are concerned about their physical safety, perhaps more than any time in recent memory, and they now have personal information that is exposed.
Connecting those dots is very important. Scott McFarland, thank you so very much for doing that. China and Russia said today they plan to expand their bilateral relationship. Up next, how the two countries plan to deepen those ties and how that may affect the war in Ukraine. You are streaming Red and Blue.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
So now if China wants to play a constructive role here in this conflict, then they ought to press Russia to pull its troops out of Ukraine and Ukrainian sovereign territory. They should urge President Putin to cease bombing cities, hospitals, and schools, to stop the war crimes and the atrocities, and end the the war today. It could happen right now.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. That was National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby at the White House today talking about the summit in Moscow between Chinese President Xi Jinping and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. The leaders signed an agreement deepening their partnership and discussed the war in Ukraine. Despite these closer ties with Russia, China has looked to cast itself as a potential, and that's a really important word, potential negotiator. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now from the North Lawn of the White House. Ed, what does the White House, through John Kirby and others, make of this idea floated by China that it can be a peacemaker?
They think a lot of things about it, including some words that you'll see here in a moment, but they don't take at face value too seriously what went on in Moscow the last 2 days, believing that the way to end this is for Russia to simply withdraw its troops. What we heard from John Kirby, as you said, who's made a few appearances this week. Usually it's about once, maybe twice. He's been quite active this week because he speaks on foreign policy for the president, and he knows there's been a lot of questions about it. He shared the thoughts of the administration on all this just a little while ago. Take a listen.
I don't think you can reasonably look at China as impartial in any way. They haven't condemned this this invasion. They haven't stopped buying Russian oil and Russian energy. President Xi saw fit to fly all the way to Moscow, hasn't talked once to President Zelensky, hasn't visited Ukraine, hasn't bothered to avail himself of the Ukrainian objective, and he and his regime keeps parroting the Russian propaganda that this is somehow a war of the West on Russia, that it's some sort of existential threat to Mr. Putin. That's just a bunch of malarkey.
Does this meeting improve or make it more difficult for President Biden to ever meet again with President Xi?
The president wants to keep the lines of communication open with China. Nothing's changed about that. And as I said yesterday, at the appropriate time, we'll pursue another conversation with President Xi.
So in other words, the U.S. is still willing to talk to China. They understand they've got to have a relationship with them. But when it comes to the issue of Ukraine, they clearly see China now taking the side of Russia, which they think is irresponsible. And they think Russia's whole interpretation of this is obviously designed to convince at least authoritarian regimes that they're the victim here, when in fact it was, of course, Russia that invaded Ukraine, Major.
As you know, Ed, on my show last week, The Takeout, John Kirby was my guest. I asked him about what the administration assesses is the likelihood of China providing actual military assistance of the lethal variety. He said that it would be not in China's best interest, and they still have no hard intelligence that that's happened, but that's got to be the specter that sort of sits over all of these conversations between Xi and Putin face to face.
Absolutely. And they said today, again, no evidence yet that that kind of assistance is coming, but obviously they reminded China and Russia what would happen if it does.
And I'm going to give you 3 words and let you run away with them, Ed. Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah, I didn't have this on the schedule for today, Major, but she and many others are receiving a pretty neat award today. She's getting the National Medal of Arts, and a handful of others are also getting the National Humanities Medal from President Biden. And these are the 2021 medals in both of those categories. This was a ceremony that was delayed by the pandemic, the president hosting people including Bruce Springsteen, Gladys Knight, Jose Feliciano, and Vera Wang, among others, plus Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And we spoke to her a little while ago about what she makes of this notable distinction. This is one of those that's given to people who are making lasting contributions to American culture and entertainment.
Yes.
I mean, when you read something like that,
yes.
I mean, look, you've won a lot of things, but where does this one rank amid all the other awards?
Well, to be honest with you, I think there's been a bit of a clerical error. So I would prefer for you not to delve too deep. I think I'm not necessarily supposed to be on this list, but delighted to be here nonetheless.
It's not a clerical error. In fact, the citation says that she is, quote, one of the most decorated comedic actors of our time. Julia Louis-Dreyfus has blazed a trail for women in comedy and across American life through her commitment to excellence and the power of her example. So congratulations to her and all the other honorees who are here at the White House today.
The funniest Veep there's ever been.
I would agree. I would agree.
Ed O'Keefe, covering everything at the White House today, even the unexpected. We thank you so very much.
Take care.
That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You are streaming CBS News.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
An original